Hmm? Ah!
Your intro, the music makes me happy. I get super excited. Like, what are they going to talk about? I'm such like a fangirl of the show. I'm surprised you even let me on.
Podcast Junkies, episode 127. Welcome back. My name is Harry Duran, host of this show. New episodes every Tuesday. That's what it looks like. The new schedule is every Tuesday. Not to say that it can't change, but for now, that's what it is, Tuesday mornings. In case you missed last week's episode, I had an intuitive conversation with the one and only Tina Conroy, who I was introduced to by Katie Kremitzos at Podfest, and I loved what her story was and how she was using something that she learned and was to her, it's a tool and a gift, and she was able to translate that into her podcast and also demonstrated how she's helping others with that as well, to just become more aware and of the choices they make in their lives and how to live a life full of gratitude. Really, really enjoyed the energy level on that conversation. Hopefully you can check that out. This week we speak to Ramona Rice. Ramona has been a fan of the show for quite some time, and we're really happy to finally have her on. This episode is brought to you by Shure Microphones, historic company, been in business for over 70 years, and you're currently listening to the SM7B. And while the sound is clear, sometimes my words are not. I'm also a fan of their Motive line, which I'm testing in the field. You can check out the full line of my setup at podcastjunkies.com/sure. This episode is also brought to you by Podbean. Did you know Podbean has its own podcast as well? It's called Podcasting Smarter, and it's hosted by the lovely Jennifer Crawford, who I've had the honor of meeting at Podfest. We really hit it off. She also organizes DC Podfest, which is a little known fact. Check it out. Check out both if you get a chance. Podbean has great packages for new podcasters, and they start as low as $3, and the unlimited plan starts at $9. So if you're just getting started and you're wondering where to host your show, then there's very few places that I'd recommend, and Podbean is definitely one of them for folks looking to get started. So listen to the end of the episode. You'll hear the retention hashtag, my way of seeing who's exactly paying attention and listening to these all the way through. Shout outs to folks who've been listening in the past and have done it, like Jeanette and Patrick and Denny and some other folks I'm going to get in trouble for not remembering. Enjoy this week's conversation. So Ramona, this is long overdue.
I'm very excited. You have no idea.
Thank you so much for joining the Podcast Junkies family.
I'm thrilled. Like, I feel like this is like it. I don't need to do any interviews anymore. That's not true. But I'll gladly do interviews. But this was like kind of like on my bucket list after Podcast Movement 15. I kept seeing all these kids in like these yellow shirts, and someone had explained what it was because I was brand new to podcasting. And I was like, that's my goal, is to be on that show. And I've done it. So yay me.
Well, I think what's more important is the fact that we became friends before then. And I think
way before then.
Yeah. And that just leads to a more enriching conversation.
I think so too. I have my best podcasting moments when I'm with a friend like Jonathan Oakes, who's been on your show. I've been on Mark Asquith show, and he and I are obviously super close because I work with him. And those are my favorite shows because it's really just friends meeting up.
Yes.
And those are the best kind. So, but again, I'll gladly go on almost anybody's show. I can't think of a show I'd say no to. Maybe if they're talking like quantum physics, or if they made me spell. I'm a terrible speller, actually, if I confess that. For some reason, like, spelling bees as a child used to terrify me because I would close my eyes and I couldn't visualize the word. So those kids, like you see them on ESPN when they're doing the spelling bee, I'm just like, how do they do that? I'm amazed by them. They are amazing and rock stars, and I could never do that.
So what is your superpower?
I think talking really fast. I think so. I think talking really fast. I think I always have a comeback. I don't mean to. It just sort of happens. And I think right now I'm in super mom mode, I think. And you saw that in Florida recently because we were together and the kids were there. So I was kind of like podcast over here and then mommy over here and everything in between. So those are kind of my superpowers these days.
Why is the talking fast a defense mechanism?
No, I've always just talked really fast. I have a fast talking mom, and I just have a lot to say. My mind works in I actually have an anxiety disorder, and my mind just goes super fast. And sometimes I don't realize how fast I'm talking. Like, I understand what I'm saying, but most people hearing me go like, what? Which is ironic because, I'm a professional podcaster. So my job is to communicate, which is better to be slow and, enjoy the pauses. And instead it just comes out really fast, and it's just me at this point at 36, almost 37. I'm kind of like, nah, this is who I am. So just hopefully you hear every other word and get the gist.
So what you're saying is they should not be listening to this episode at 2x speed.
No one ever needs to listen to me at 2x speed. No, definitely not.
You operate at 2x. That's a t-shirt already. There should be it should be a podcast player, like a visual, and then with the lever, like you got to make this. This is the podcast player, and then that lever where that we can switch it from 1x, and it says 1.5, and then it shows it moved to 2x, and this is me at 2x.
Yeah, Ramona speed.
Yeah, exactly. 1.5, 2, and then Ramona.
Maybe I can get Hanny Mora from Simple, for to do that for me. Maybe. That's what happens when you have relationships with podcasters. Suddenly you can ask for these favors.
We should make this the how many fellow podcasters are we going to name in the course of this episode drinking game?
Yes. And I don't mean to, but it's just, and it's funny for me because I haven't been podcasting that long, Harry. It's not been very long at all. And yet I feel like I'm really in this weird club that some of these kids have been in for like years. And I'm like, I'm brand new and I'm accidental. I should not be a podcaster at all. So, yet I am.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's funny. The way I discovered podcasting was I was working at a large real estate company here in Virginia. I was their communications manager. So I handled all their press releases and social media and blogging. And I had a budget for conferences every year. And I picked one because it was in Las Vegas and it was in my budget. And it was the week of my husband's birthday. And I said, sweet, I'll go to this conference and I will bring my husband out and he'll basically get a free vacation. We just pay for the plane ticket. And it'll be fun. And it happened to be New Media Expo. The last year they had it. And that's where I met Mark. I met Jonathan. Who else did I meet down there? Dave Jackson. Bunch of podcasters. And just, it was like my eyes opened up. And at the time, I had this like really fledgling blog called the Sports Gal Pal that came out of a college project. And I was talking about it with Mark one night because he asked me why my Twitter handle is at Sports Gal Pal, and I explained it. And he goes, oh my God, that would be a perfect podcast. And I'm like, yeah. I didn't even listen to podcasts, Harry. Like I didn't know what Serial was. I'm like, what is this? I was one of those people, like the tripod people where you're like, here's the app on your phone. They had to show me where the app on the phone was at this conference. I would be embarrassed now looking at myself going, stop it. And yeah, so I started listening to podcasts, sports podcasts, and I was trying to find sports podcasts that had women, and there was really only one that was independent from like an ESPN or Fox Sports. And there were these women on the West Coast, and they were, it was their first episode in February. And instead of talking about like March Madness or preseason baseball, they were still talking about the Super Bowl. And it frustrated me because I'm going, this is what men think of when they think of women in sports. We only think of the big things instead of, what normal sports fans, typically men, think about. And so the last day of the conference, I was talking to a couple in the lobby of the Westgate Hotel. And I went on this rant, and this man suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and he introduced himself. I'm Jay Soderberg from Blog Talk Radio, and I love you. And I used to be head of podcasting at ESPN. I think this would be a great podcast. I want to give you one. So he gave me a podcast, and 6 weeks later, I had the Sports Gal Pal.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I did fairly well with that podcast until I stopped it. So, it was amazing. I look back and I'm like, I've never paid for hosting a podcast ever. Because I work for podcast websites, all my podcasts are hosted for free as part of my, compensation. So I'm like, I've never paid for hosting, Harry. I don't know what that's like. I really don't.
That's hilarious that you could say that from day one.
Yeah. And I had the mentorship of him. That was key. Like he helped me with the format of the show. They helped me with some of the technical aspects of it. I got really lucky. Like it was a learning curve, and I think it really shot me. Not that the podcast was really that popular or had that many downloads, but it got me in the eyes of people I think that was important. And that's how maybe what normally takes maybe a podcaster like 4 years to do, I've been able to do in almost 2, if that makes sense.
What were some of the takeaways from that first from Sports Gal Pal in terms of what you thought going in, and maybe like the first thing that surprised you?
Just how much work it is.
Yeah.
Because I did all my own editing, and because it was sports, I tried to do the whole batching episodes thing. Yeah, sports podcasts, you can't do that. You just can't, because you're talking about topical topics. So I got really good at editing them, where I would edit them literally within an hour and get them up, because it was, you never know what was going to happen next. So I wanted to get them up and going. So I think what it taught me was, you stop worrying about the minute details of the ands and the ums and the pauses and me breathing heavy in between words because I talked too fast and I wasn't taking a breath, but I had to get all that out in that one sentence, or I would have forgotten things. And, it taught me too that it's okay to really be kind of a bigger version of yourself on the microphone. I think sometimes with certain topics, you have to be. I think that for her, she was a different version of myself than I am now, simply because of, I've gone through things, and, but she was just, that whole show was just like fun for me for a long time, because I got to ask questions that people don't ask. It was really more of a sociological podcast where I'm asking, why do you love the sport? Why did you choose this team? Why do you, willing to spend all this money? Why do they do the things they do? And I actually have a sociology degree from the University of Virginia. And so it fit really well in that kind of search for me was, when you look at sports as part of our society, I mean, anything that brings that many people together under one kind of tradition, it has a huge social impact. Sports influences conversations we have about things like concussions or domestic violence, or how much athletes are paid, or should municipalities be paying for sports arenas? Because especially if you're not a sports fan, then why do I care about the sports arena? Yeah. And those kind of issues are fundamentally just everybody's issues, not just the sports fans.
Were there conversations that took a turn that maybe you didn't expect? Because with the theme of sports on the show, it's pretty, the format is pretty rigid, not rigid, but just kind of, you sort of know what you're going to get into. But like with all conversations, and all really good conversations with people who you're having like a nice engagement with, sometimes you just go off on different tracks.
Yeah, I always started those conversations with, I tried to at the beginning have like a rigid schedule of questions, and that just didn't work for me. So instead, I would always start with one question. What got you into sports? Because it was always different. Sometimes I would have a guest and they would be like, well, my dad got me into Little League, or I used to watch sports because of this. I know my own story. I really got into sports to spend time with my husband, because I realized when I moved in with him, I was going to be a football widow. So I learned everything I could about football and realized how much fun it was. And it was our thing. And then college basketball came around, and it was like, oh my God, I love this so much. And that was the thing we loved to do together. And so originally, I wanted it to be a show where wives could listen, or partners who had crazy sports fans in their lives, so they could understand why they get so upset when their team loses, or why they're willing to spend so much time and effort and money into following a sports team, or playing in fantasy football, which is really just Dungeons and Dragons for football. It is, or playing with Barbies. I mean, really, it's like building a Barbie dream house is when you're building a perfect fantasy football team. But quickly I realized that those weren't the people who were listening. It was the sports nuts. It was my, the husbands that were listening. So instead, I just had conversations with sports fans. I just had conversations with people just about areas of sports they normally didn't get to talk about. And sometimes we would talk about topical things that were going on right then at that moment. But for the most part, it was just general, like, why do you love this? Because it was something no one else was asking.
Did you ever get an answer that surprised you?
Oh, all the time. I had one of my most famous people I had on was Adnan Virk from ESPN, and he's actually a huge movie buff. Just getting him on was a surprise, because I did a random tweet out on Twitter about how I would love to have him on the show to talk about movies sometime, and he tweeted back immediately. He goes, "Let's do it." I was like, "Shut up. I was like, wow, nicest guy. And we talked about movies, and we talked about like our favorite sports movies. And I said my favorite sports movie was The Sandlot, and he looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, no, it's the best sports movie. Are you kidding me? Every kid needs a summer like that. So him being him like kind of like doing that, and just his whole journey about the fact that, you know, that's his job. So at the end of the day, when he goes home, he doesn't want to talk about that. He wants to, you know, spend time with his 2 kids and his wife.
Yeah.
The last thing he wants to do is talk about, you know, baseball. And
so, I mean, this idea of reaching out via Twitter is, I can relate to that because I reached out to Mark Maron's producer, Brendan McDonald, via Twitter, and said I'd love, because I heard him on The Wolf Den. This was about now going back 2 years. And then he said, yeah, some of that stuff is dated. And I was like, well, if you ever want to bring folks up to date on where you are now, I'd love to have you on. And we eventually agreed, and he came on, and we did it by Skype. And it was just amazing because, I think we underestimate what we're capable of achieving sometimes, and we sell ourselves short. And I think because we have this platform, and sometimes people love to have conversations, and I think for the most part, most people are good people. And if they feel like there's no ulterior motive, and it's just like something that they would enjoy, and it's in their wheelhouse, I don't see why they wouldn't think about it. Because I think as we get, you know, bigger, so to speak, and not to say that we're famous celebrities, but once podcasters start getting to the point of having a show for 3 or 4 years, people want to be on your show, right? And people ask you to be on their show, and you're like, well, you're gonna have to pay it forward. I think if you don't want to have bad karma.
I think for Sports Gap Out, because it was, you know, such a short show, I only did it for really consistently for about 9 months. I think the reason why I was able to get someone like him on, I was able to get like someone like John Lee Dumas on, and Pat Flynn, who normally take forever to get on shows. I gave them an opportunity to talk about something they normally never get to talk about. John, I found out from his amazing partner, Kate, who's a good friend of mine, he was so excited to be on my show because I didn't ask him about entrepreneurship. Yeah. I didn't ask him about, I let him talk about I think he was launching the Freedom Journal very quickly, but we talked about Providence basketball, and I got him because I met him at Podcast Movement. And you remember the buses at the Dallas trip where we went to the one place with like the bull and the dress up clothes and the band on? He happened to be sitting in front of me, and I have my good friend Shamika Williams, who does a podcast called Escaping the Cubicle, and she lives in my local area. And so we were sitting next together, and then John sits down like right there, and I pop my head in between the seat, and I'm like, John, the Big East sucks, the ACC rules. And he and I, for the entire time back, went back and forth about why each other's wrong. And he goes, I want on the podcast. I had to wait till December to get him on, but he basically was like, I want to come on, and he did, and he rocked it. It was a great episode. And then Pat, it was a cool episode just because, people know his story and how he was an architect and got laid off. We didn't talk about any of that. We talked about him. He was actually band leader for the Berkeley band. Yeah, that's right. Which is a huge deal. And then he was actually on a crew team, like an all-girl crew team. And he was the coxswain,
coxswain, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it coxswain or coxswain?
I never know. I'm terrible. I cannot spell and I barely pronounce things. Again, I don't know why I'm a content creator. You know, really, I get paid to write for a living and podcast for a living. And the basic fundamentals of it,
sounds like you're absolutely qualified for that job.
So he's that person. So he talked about that, and I never heard that before. And just I loved being able to do that for these guys. You know, all the people that have come on, just giving them an opportunity just to talk about stuff they don't get to talk about all the time. You know, when you ask a podcaster who normally is in like, let's say like food or something like that, to talk about something other than that, it shows that we're not just the one niche that people think we're in. We're a whole being. And I think that's important.
It's funny because I had Rob Dion on, and he's got a podcast called Open Sky Fitness. But Jason Bryant was listening, and Jason Bryant obviously is.
I'm good friend with him. Yeah, I love him.
Great guy, and he does podcasts on wrestling. And he heard Rob mention something about that, so he asked Rob to come on to talk about wrestling, just wrestling.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, Jason and I were in the Podcast Movement Fantasy Football League with each other this year. Yeah, so again, it's just this is what happens like to people if you've never gone to like Podcast Movement or Podfest or any kind of look. Do it. Just pay the money. I don't care if you don't have it. Put it on a credit card. You'll be fine. It's well worth the investment because just to be in a room with like people who understand this. is priceless because no one in my regular life gets this at all. They're like, you sit in your closet and you talk to people on the internet. And, my mom even built me like a desk inside my closet. So I have a proper desk now to hold all the stuff that I need. But, and now she's on a podcast with me, which has been fun. So I'm bringing people in. I feel like, I'm like, Moses through the desert. Come, the chosen people, come to part the Red Sea. We're going to find the promised land of downloads and, fame and glory, but just only in podcast festivals. In real life, no one will recognize you at all.
So what was, because you were that outsider when you went to NMX, was it NMX 2015?
Yeah, that was the last one. Yeah,
I was there as well, and that was weird because it was with the radio. What was the broadcasting thing they were trying to
National Association of Broadcasters?
Yeah, they're trying to do that at the same time, and we ended up being in this like the stepchild area, and it was like the
there was a lot of people complaining about that.
The little kids' Thanksgiving table.
Yes,
but was there like an aha moment because you went there? Did you know? Have you heard about podcasting? You went there because you said it was for your company, but like, talk to me about like those first either few hours or first day.
It was weird because it had promised itself to be like just a content marketing conference. Very quickly, I don't know if it's because I met Mark Asquith on the tram to a VIP party. And I blame Mark Asquith for all of this. It's all his fault. I will tell Mark it is all your fault. And he goes, yes, and I'm stuck with you now. So I have my barren to burn too. So I met him on the thing. And I think because he became my buddy. And then again, Jonathan was around. And then Shamika was also at that thing. They were all podcasters already. I think that's what kind of brought me to that podcasting track because I wanted to stick with my, you meet conference buddies a lot of times. Yeah. And sometimes when you go to conference, you have your conference buddies just for that conference and you never see each other again. These people are like forever friends at this point. It just was a weird kind of, and there was a lot of people we met there, but it was just those three really kind of stuck. It was weird. It was like I kept seeing this podcasting thing. I'm like, what are they talking about? But I got really excited when Grammar Girl was speaking, and I knew who she was because she had been on Oprah, and I've used her blog to teach me things. Mignon Fogarty, I think, is
Mignon Fogarty. Yeah, she was. She actually kicked off season 2, episode 100, episode 101. Yeah,
amazing. I have the biggest girl crush on her because I think what she does is just a godsend for writing and just making grammar and that quick dirty tips thing she's got going on. And she did the best presentation. Like I loved all the education there. And then I saw this dude named Chris Ducker who's become a friend of mine on stage, and I was like, he's talking about farts and spacesuits. I'm like, what is this? I kind of felt like it was like being like Alice in Wonderland. And so I'm there and I'm going, okay, this all seems like nonsense to me, but sure, I'll go with it because I've already been blogging. I mean, I had a job, if you think about it, Harry, I had a job that a lot of people would crave, a regular 9-to-5 job where my job was social media and blogging and teaching other people how to do those things. How many people do you see in all these that would love to have a regular job doing that? And I had that, and but I wasn't satisfied. When I got my microphone and started doing interviews, and my first couple interviews, of course, terrible. I love what Roman Mars said at Podcast Movement 15. And if you're doing the drinking game, you're probably drunk by now. If you're not, you've got a great stomach. But I love what he said in his keynote speaker where he's like, you're going to hate all your 51st episodes. And I'm like, yes, thank you, Roman Mars. He's the nicest guy. And so I can't listen to them now, but I had like Corey Finneran on. I know he's been on your show, and he came on. I met him at a panel at NMX, and he talked about sports. And Nick Superling was also there, and some hockey guy. I forget who his name was. He's probably actually, well, it's just hockey. I don't like hockey as a sport, but see, and you can say these things. It was my show, Sports Cowboy. We never talked about hockey, very rarely. And so Corey came on. He was like second or third guest, and he just kind of said, "Okay, I'm gonna hold your hand because you're a baby podcaster. We're gonna get through this together."
How bad was it?
Oh, well, I had like a headset microphone. So, because I wasn't sure I wanted to invest in that. And then finally, after hearing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pay the $50 to get the, Audio Technica. Like every time I see someone like in one of those podcasts, like Facebook groups asking what equipment, I just want to send them a link going, here, just buy this one. Stop asking.
Yeah. A lot of times it's almost like an excuse. They overthink it, and they want to know that they have a lot of decisions to make, so that when someone's asking them, how come you haven't started your show, like, oh, I got to figure out the mic, and I got to figure out the hosting, and I got to figure out the website, and I'm like, no, you don't. Just like,
Nope.
just do it like 80% of podcasters already do already, and that seemed to work. I mean, prior to the sponsorship with Shure, I had that ATR 2100 got me through the first 100 episodes. I mean, 2+ years. It's a
Really
solid,
good work.
yeah, workhorse.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, because again, I'm an accidental podcaster, I didn't have any time to make these decisions. I basically said, okay, whatever you tell me to do, Jay Soderberg, I'm going to do. So it allowed me the freedom to not worry about any of that
Mm-hmm.
and instead just focus on the show, which I think if more podcasters, the biggest advice I could give brand new podcasters is stop worrying about the details. Just record, because you're not going to like your first episodes anyway. You are going to listen to them and go, oh, even if the sound is perfect, even the technical aspects of the podcast are perfect, you're not as a host unless you are coming from unless you're Jimmy Fallon or Johnny Carson coming from I interview all the time. So those podcasters that are really well known, that interview a lot for a living anyway, they already know how to do this. It's just a different format. Those of us who are coming off the street, we have to learn, and it takes time. So just give yourself the time and just record and stop worrying about the details of your freaking microphone.
There's something to be said about creating a show that is this is why they tell you to go so niche, because if you do go really, really niche, there'll be people to the point we were talking about earlier who want to talk about that super, super, super niche topic. And I mean, it's probably, if you do enough research, I think you could find a group of people like, I just want to talk to celebrities about, I don't know, their favorite robe, I don't know, sneakers or something like that. Just like something like just trying to think of something that's a super niche hobby, but that a lot of people would have it, and you could just kind of pull them in, just be really specific what you want to talk about and make them short episodes, and I think you do well.
I would want to interview celebrities about who are obsessed like I am about Trader Joe's, particularly the triple ginger snap cookie. That is what I would do if I were doing a super niche show.
Well, for that, you might as well get Trader Joe's to pay you to do that.
I would think so, yes. And they could pay me in gift cards. I'd be more than happy with that, because I have 2 growing children. And my son is 10 and he's fairly tall for his age. His dad was 6'7", and he's just growing. I'm like, stop it. I mean, we had to buy him new. I'm like, just stop. Just give me 2 months before I have to go buy you new pants. So, kids.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I think, Trader Joe's doesn't spend any money on marketing, so that's probably out of the window.
I know, but I love them, so I'm okay with that. That's why I have no problem. And their employees seem really happy. If you've never been to Trader Joe's, go, because they'll open up any of the food for you to try. They have bells, stickers.
I bet you if they sold those Trader Joe's Hawaiian dress shirts or shirts, I think people would buy them.
I would. I'd buy at least one. Why not? Todd from Blueberry would have one. He probably does.
Ding.
Ding.
Okay, so Sports Gal Pal is now retired. So what was that? Yeah. What was next then?
We Should Not Be Friends. So that was a short run show with my friend Tim Jester, who I met via Sports Gal Pal. He was on a podcast with Jay Soderberg called Next Fan Up. He was a Atlanta Falcons super fan. I did this series where I did these 2-a-day episodes. I don't ever do this, kids. Don't ever do this. I'm about to tell you something I did that was crazy. For 30 days, I had 2 episodes out a day. Yeah, I wish you guys could see Harry's face right now because he's already feeling the pain of this. So 2 episodes a day. Those I did kind of batch as much as possible. 32 different guests talking about different sports teams. I think that for me was the big learning curve. It made me so much of a better podcaster and interviewer because you have to. The more you do it, the better you get. So that was great. But I met this great guy, Tim, and he went through some life changes earlier, and he was there for me during, this past February. Not this year, 2017, but in 2016, some of you may know the story. My husband passed away and Tim was there. He was my 5 a.m. call as I'm going to the hospital following him. He was there when I found the news out. I called him immediately. And we had already planned to do this show, We Should Not Be Friends, because we really shouldn't have been friends. He's a single guy in Atlanta. I'm this married woman in Virginia. But we became really good friends. And so we had a really good dynamic. And what happened was instead the show was originally supposed to be me following all of his single adventures. Well, he got together with his girlfriend. So suddenly I was the single one going on dates and trying to figure this thing out and dealing with grief. And it was amazing. I got more fan interaction with that show than Sports Gal Pal right away. I think because it was just universal topics. I think people, I was really vulnerable in talking about the grief and James, and we were just silly. And it was a show that you should not listen to if you're a decent human being or have small children. My children are never allowed to listen to that show. And that one's recently kind of took a hiatus because he's got some priorities in his life, and I've got some that we need to focus on. So I think rather than trying to just keep doing episodes, we're like, let's just take a break from it. But it served its purpose for me. It allowed me, number one, to talk to my best friend regularly and record them, which I'm glad we did. And I hope that it helped people just see that, you can be very funny while you're incredibly depressed and sad.
I think what's important is sometimes podcasters, they really want to be disciplined and they really want to have their show week in and week out. But there are shows that that just serve their purpose, so to speak. It's maybe that Netflix model where it's just like a series, or it's just like a couple of seasons. And I think if you feel like you've said everything you need to say on the topic, and then you're just going to be like making shit up, or you're just going to be squeezing out episodes. You're like, and this kind of, the listeners can hear like, you really lost enthusiasm for this and you don't want to do it anymore. So as much as we try to preach, like, be consistent, like if you don't have anything else to say on the topic, it's okay. Just put a bow on it.
Yeah, and we didn't even have like really a goodbye episode. So the only thing we did was we actually had the guy I'm currently seeing. He actually got interviewed by Tim, and that was last episode. So it kind of wraps up this whole period where I was single and dating lots of men, and every guy I dated, his name was Adam of some kind. So it'd be like I had Boomerang Adam because he kept coming around. I had Viking Adam because he was of Viking ancestry. There was Political Adam. There was Hot Historian Adam. There was Contractor Adam. There were a lot of Adams. Funny Adam. There were just a lot. And Tim at one point was like, I just need a chart to keep up, because I was just like, I'd been with my husband for 14 years. So it was like summertime. And again, I was like, I'm just going to see what's out there. And because this is going to be my one time in life probably to do this, do it. I'm 36, young enough to enjoy it, smart enough to know better about certain aspects. So that was good. And yeah, I did. And I enjoyed myself. And so we talked about that. And then Tim was in Chicago with me for Podcast Movement. I convinced Mark to let Tim and I run the podcast websites table, but it was good. No, it was fun. We went to a baseball game with Jonathan and Mark. That's kind of our Podcast Movement tradition, is we go to baseball games, which is hilarious because Mark is British and doesn't follow sports at all. So he's got Jonathan and I like trying to explain things to him, and he's just like, I'm just here for the experience.
And the beer.
Yes. So I think we got beer after the Chicago Cubs game. I don't think we got any actually at Wrigley. I'm trying to remember. It was hot. That's all I know. And Jonathan has this massive ability to get great seats. So I think we're going to see the Angels play.
Oh, really?
The Rangers. Yeah. In Podcast Movement. Oh, no. Jared easily knows, the organizer of Podcast Movement, that at least the three of us always go to a baseball game. I think we're going to try to convince, I think Liz and her husband want to come, Liz Covart. Yeah, I am packing a lot of podcasters. I'm not name dropping. It's just ding, ding, drink. It's just, but that's what happens. You go to enough of these conferences and you start mingling with people, they become pals. And Harry knows all these people I'm talking about. So really, Harry and I are just having a conversation. You guys get to listen and enjoy.
We're just hanging out. We're just hanging out in Ramona's closet. It's okay.
Yeah, and it is. He can see it. The clothes are behind me. I just did the art of tidying up to some degree with the clothes.
Okay.
That was really good. I highly suggest doing that. Like, I even did everything she says, like pet the clothes and say goodbye to them. But I got rid of like 9 bags of stuff.
9 bags.
Yeah, it was bad.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, I went through a buying phase last year. Again, when you grieve, you spend lots of money. So I there were things with tags. I'm like, no. So yeah.
So did you go through the Tinder phase as well?
Oh yeah. No. Swipe, left, right. Oh yeah. You can listen to all that. If you really want to know, go to weshouldnot.com. You can listen to all the episodes. They're all there. And you can hear all my adventures and you can live vicariously through me. I had people writing going, who are you seeing now? And I'm like, to be honest with you, I mean, there was one time, Harry, I had 3 dates in one night. I became that person. Because you think that's
like reality show stuff.
But I did it to myself. No, I went to a crappy Indian dinner with some dude I met on Tinder, and it was boring.
Indian Adam.
No, it was just, I don't think he got an Adam name. He wasn't even worth an Adam name. And then I met up with a hot historian, had a drink, and then there was this kind of younger guy who just didn't have his life together, and met up with him after that. I'm like, I can't do this. I already have kids. So, there was a lot of that. So meeting the new guy that I've been dating since November. So it's been almost 5 months? Yeah. It's kind of settled me down. It's nice to be just with one person for an extended period of time. Like I'm like, oh yeah, that's what this feels like. Relationships. Yay. So we did We Should Not, and then put a bow on that. And my next podcast project is with my mom, and it's finally my first business podcast. Ooh, so exciting. But it's funny. It's Spapreneur. It's a lot of people don't know this in the podcasting space. I actually own a very successful day spa with my parents. We have 23 massage therapists, 15 massage rooms. My daughter is a spa baby. She just assumes all little girls get massages and nails and skincare on a regular basis. She goes to Girl Scouts and she's like, "What do you mean you don't get facials regularly? I don't understand this." I'm like, "Addison, not all of them have a mommy that owns a spa." Yeah. So we've decided we're giving advice to independent spa owners because there's been a terrible increase of chain massage places and day spas in our industry, and they're Pizza Hutting our industry. And we're like, don't go to the Pizza Huts of massage, don't work for them, create your own and make it you. And so we're on there. The best part is the stories are hilarious because when you've had a business for 20 years in which people get naked, you're going to have some good stories. And my mother is basically an older version of me. So John Buchanan from John Buchanan, who does the She Podcast Girls editing, he's my editor. He was just telling me, he goes, "Your mom cracks me up every time I listen to these episodes because she's just her, because she doesn't understand podcasting. She holds her microphone. She doesn't want to use a stand. So I'm always having to like, "Mom, keep it like right there." And she's like, "No, I don't want to stand." I'm like, "Oh my God." So just imagine bringing your mother onto a podcast.
I cannot imagine that.
It's fun though. It's a project she and I can work on together, and the response for that spa community has been great. They're really like, "We love you guys, and you're giving such great practical advice, and it's funny." And I think that's important because massage is a very singular industry. It's just you and the client, so it's not like a normal job where you can team build in the room. It's just you and the client. So you got to figure out something to kind of market yourself and do stuff. So that's, so I have now my third podcast, which is nuts when I think about it. That's crazy.
There's a couple of things happening there. Number one is this aspect of if people were to listen from the beginning, there's your whole story. I mean, in some ways your life story is an aspect of it, obviously not the whole thing, but when you started podcasting, they can hear what you're going through, and if they pull out your personal episodes, it's like they get a feel for what your life has been like, over the past few years, which is fascinating.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like I don't. Everybody has their own personal relationship with whatever they believe in, if it's God or the universe or whatever. I really truly feel like fate set me up to discover podcasting when I did, because I think they knew it 6 months. Not even a year later, my husband would be gone. And I really needed Mark to offer me the position at Podcast Websites. It allowed me to quit my 9-to-5 job, which took me away from the kids too much. And I got to say that 9-to-5 job was so supportive of me doing that. They understood and they were like, "We get it. We hate to lose you, but we understand." And podcasting, I said this at Podfest and you were there, but it's a community. And the reason I mention all these names is not to name drop. Ooh, I know Harry Duran. Ooh, so exciting. The reason I do that is because I respect the people that are in this industry. I respect how open and honest they are. And I respect how much they just embraced me this past year. Like they've really kind of cuddled me up and said, "It's going to be okay. We're going to get you through this." And there were many times when I couldn't sleep at night and I would pop in an episode of anything. just to hear voices, just to hear grown-up voices around me, because I needed that. It didn't matter if it was, Corey talking about, this incredible run the Cubs had this past year, or if it was Jonathan and silliness and Trivial Warfare, or, more stylized produced shows. Like I love that one from Radiolab, More Perfect, with the Supreme Court. That one's just, everyone should listen to that one. It's just fabulous. It didn't matter. It was nice knowing I'm not alone in the world.
Yeah, it's just this intimacy that you get, especially if you know the host. There's something like, there's an aspect of me making time to listen. I can't listen to all of them, but occasionally I have a list of all my friends' shows, and especially people that have been on. And it's like every once in a while, it's like, oh, let me see what they're up to. And it's almost like a way of checking in with what they're doing without having to find time together to get on a call. Well, I'll just listen to their show, and it's kind of like you hear their voice, you see what they're up to. They'll likely mention something that's been happening in their lives, and that's a nice check-in. Until it kind of helps us stay connected until the next conference.
Exactly, and it just sometimes it feels like there's so much time between, conferences. Like my next gathering, I'm trying to think, the big one, obviously in August is Podcast Movement, of course. There'll be some little ones in between, but yeah, and again, like I tell people, there's a thriving community of them in Florida. They're all over the place down there. I'm kind of jealous of them going, I need to create that here, but I'm not sure I want to. It just seems like a lot of work, and I've got other.
Yeah. Everyone's talking about the premiere of The Messengers that was just debuted at Tampa at the movie theater. It was all over Facebook, and I had a couple of. I had Tina Dietz. I was speaking to Tina Dietz earlier today, and she's great. She did a fantastic job at Podfest.
Love her.
And Tina Conroy that I met as well. And everyone was talking about the messengers, because it was like on social media, we were all connected. We're connected from the conference, and it was just nice to see that that's happening. And if you listen to all these episodes back to back to back, you'll know that this is the third time I've talked about the documentary, because it's going to be such a great opportunity to see our peeps, on the screen, regular people podcasting, which I think is going to do wonders for the for podcasting, and get a lot of people curious about what exactly it is, why we're having so much fun.
I think so. And I think it's going to hopefully allow other voices to say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Because I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, is that people listen to podcasters, whether they discover Harry's show or, a bigger show like maybe like John Lee Dumas's show, and they think, well, I can do that too. And that's how we get people in the industry. The biggest problem right now, I think, is that we get them in the industry. We need to have more people like I experienced, where I had hand holding to get me through the first 6 months. And had I not had that, I don't think I would have done all the things I did with Sports Gal Pal. The reason I stopped Sports Gal Pal wasn't that it wasn't successful. It was for my needs. It was very successful. It's very painful for me to still watch sports without my husband. And I've had many people say, he wouldn't want you to give that up. And, there are many things in my life that I'm able to do that I did with my husband that I feel like, oh, he's with me, I remember him. Sports is the one thing that when I do it and when I watch it, I feel his absence. So why would I put myself through that? And that's the way I describe it. So you can't have a sports podcast without watching sports. I know it works for certain sports podcasters and professionals on that 4-letter network, because they don't watch all the games, yet they have many opinions on them. But I was not one of them. I instead watched a lot of games, probably more than I needed to really to understand what was going on. I did that too, Harry, because I am a woman in a guy's world, and I didn't want them to have any excuses. Jay told me this advice. I think this is good for all of us with various topics where there are strong opinions. As long as you've got facts to back up your opinion, state your opinion. That was just invaluable just in general in life. I'm going, that's just a great thing. So I really want to see us as a community now go, okay, we had a bunch of new podcasters that were starting at Podfest. I'm seeing them, in various groups. So I'm launching. We've got to handhold them a little bit more and say it's going to be okay, because that rush of new is going to fall away from them. And then the routine of creating the show. And that's when you're like, oh, I have to do this again. And we have to have somebody kind of going, you can do this again. Let's go. Let's make more episodes. You can do that. So that's where I feel like if there's anything missing in our industry, it's that.
Well, what you were talking about with Sports Gal Pals, it's because your husband's the one who got you into sports, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't force me into it. It was just one of those things. It was my love letter to him. Sports Gap, I realized, was my love letter to him. It was my way of saying, you have introduced this entire world to me that I love, and I love studying, and I love thinking about and doing and other things. And, you know, I went out with many of the Adams who were sports fans. I wound up with a guy who is not into sports at all.
Wow.
There's a reason for that. He's into improv instead. So now I'm taking improv classes.
I hear a podcast coming.
I thought about it. I thought about relaunching Sports Gap with him on and maybe telling how to explain football to my boyfriend.
Now it's got to be something new, and it's about your improv journey.
Improv journey. Yeah, that's an interesting thing because with improv, what I'm learning is that you have to, the rules are yes and. So you have to say yes and agree with whatever's going on stage. And for a while there in my life, I'm not good at that. I want to go in and change everything and take control of everything. And you can't do that and have good improv. Mm-hmm. It's helped me out so much. And I've only been taking the classes now since early February. And already I'm feeling just a difference in how I react with the kids, how I'm handling podcasts. And I'm kind of excited. There's like 5 levels at this theater. It's called Push Comedy Theater in Norfolk, Virginia. Mm-hmm. If you're ever in the Hampton Roads area, that shows like $5 and $10 a piece, like super cheap. And these guys are funny. They're really, really funny. And every once in a while I get to be on there. Not much, but it's learning a new skill, but it's transferable to podcasting. It forces you to be a better listener.
Which is always a good thing, a really good thing when it comes to podcasting.
I think it's a skill that's underutilized because podcasters often are people like me who just really want to get their voices out. So we talked about me talking very fast and I need to get everything out. I think the improv is helping me slow down a bit because I realize that there will always be time for me to add later if I need to.
I'm curious about this idea of like you always talking fast and I want to try to dig in and figure out like where that came from. Is it this idea of like always like trying to get attention when you were little?
No, I demanded attention when I was little. Like I demand attention like in my life all the time. Like I have no problem gathering that. The talking fast thing, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think it's just, I think again, my mind races at a zillion miles an hour. I have a lot of things I want to say and I want to make sure the world hears them. And it's really kind of very immature. It's an immature way of thinking because instead, if I shift and stop talking as much and allow others to give their voice, usually I find better solutions to things that I'm dealing with, new perspectives. And I think it makes me just a more aware person rather than it just be me. This past year with James dying, it really did. It was the oddest thing. Everybody goes through at least one part in their life where they want to be the most popular person, whatever there is. I suddenly, in my social group, was the most popular person because everybody was worried about me. I mean, I'm talking attention like you would not believe. The funeral, there were probably 500 people there. It was crazy. It was crazy. And all of a sudden you get to be that thing you want and you're like, oh, I don't want this because it's for a terrible reason. I think it was just the shift this past year of me forcefully slowing down. Like this summer, the only project I really worked on was podcast website stuff and then hanging out with the kids. That's all I did because I had to recover. They had to start recovering. We had to figure out this whole family of 3 dynamic we weren't expecting. And it's weird. I still feel like sometimes I have to defend the fact that I don't have a husband anymore and tell people I didn't like divorce him. He didn't leave me. He didn't leave his children. Yeah. He died. And there's a difference. And I'm starting to get over that. But there was a while there I was really jealous of whole families for a long time.
You mentioned the first response when I asked you about speaking fast was about demanding attention. What's your earliest recollection of demanding attention?
6th birthday. My mom videotaped this because my dad was in the Navy and he was out to sea. And so they would go on missions out to sea for 6 months at a time. And they were videotaping. My sister was like 6 months old and they were videotaping her. And I just remember going, this is my birthday. What the hell? What in the world? She's already cute and cuddly. Everybody knows it. Why do you need to stare at her? That's ridiculous. So that's the first thing I can remember. And ever since then, yeah, it's like, no, I need to be like, the diva in my life. It's not a trait I really like about myself. It's something I'm working on. I think I'm getting better. I think I'm mellowing out for many reasons, but I think it's always going to be there. I think too, though, what's great about it is that because I like attention, I'm able to then, utilize it. If I utilize it in ways that's healthy, I think it's a good thing. When I'm at conferences, for example, it's really helpful to demand attention when you're at a table because it brings people to you. So that's good. It's also helpful when I meet so many people and then I can say, you need to meet blah, 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 blah. Let's go and do that. So I like using it for that superpower for those things. But I think like with any kind of big talent, like something like this, you have to walk that line really carefully. And a lot of times I don't walk it as carefully as I should.
That's probably why I have a podcast website's t-shirt.
Oh, yes, because I probably demanded you take one. Yes, I did. And you will hold it up and I will take a picture. But it's a cool shirt. It's probably the coolest. It's probably one of the coolest podcasting shirts out there.
It's very nice. Super soft.
Yeah. 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 That was a Mark thing. Mark is the one great thing about working with Mark. I've told him this to his face is he's a persnickety bastard. His branding and the details of it, they better be spot on. I cannot tell you how many social media images I have had to take down because something was just off. And he finds them all. Like you think, oh, this is fine. Just push it through. No. But it is good. It's taught me a lot. And then when I was launching Spapreneur, I started using that same eye on different things. And it makes it so much better just taking that extra couple of seconds instead of rushing it out. Again, speaking it out, taking that time to listen or look and be careful with what you're putting out there. I think it makes a difference. So
it does make a difference.
I think so. And he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's one of, people don't know this about him, but, his agency Hacksaw works with some of the most incredible clients I've ever heard of. And they do amazingly beautiful things. So that's why when we get compliments like on our booth, the way it looks, or our merchandise when we're handing out to podcasters, there's a reason behind that because it's Mark. His vision for this company that he's building, which people still, I think, in podcasting don't understand. A lot of people do not understand this all-in-one concept because they're so used to saying, well, you can get your hosting here and your website here. And we're saying, no, we'll do it all. And they're like, no, that's too expensive. And we're like, is it though?
Yeah.
Because when you price it out for a new podcaster, maybe they don't want to go searching for 4 different hosts to figure out which one will work with their website. Maybe it's just nice to log into one dashboard. So again, that hand-holding thing, like I talked about, it's one of those things where maybe instead of us forcing people to always do it the way they did it, we instead say, you know what, there's a way we can still handhold and they can still focus on, like I was able to, the content, which ultimately is really what matters.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, there's so many moving parts in the beginning. I think any solutions where you can do a lot of the research and into what works and what doesn't and what works well together is always something that's going to be always continue to be attractive to new podcasters.
And it's not for everybody. There are going to be those podcasters who are more technically sound coming into it, who don't necessarily need it. That's fine. Mm-hmm. And then there's the niche who does. Celebrate both. It's okay.
I'm wondering if your child acted the way you did when you were 6, or if she has, like, how would you handle it?
Oh, Anderson has. My oldest, oh my God, he's a miniature me by far. Having kids is the best mirror ever. Like, it's the best thing you could do to make you realize, one, it's not about you. And 2, to make you see what you were like as a kid. And you're like, man, I really was a little shit, wasn't I? He's so funny and charming and he's definitely attention hound. His little sister isn't too far behind. So I've got 2 kind of kids that demand attention. I think the difference is they're so close in age that they both are at the same level. So they both know how to get it. So I think there's a difference. My sister was 5 years behind and never figured it out.
Well, maybe they keep each other in check.
They do. They're like an old married couple. And so they fight and bicker, but they love each other. Like the other day, we converted my garage into, well, it's been really a Girl Scout cookie warehouse for the last month, but it's also their playroom like the Xbox is. And they were both like cuddled in this one chair, and then they had 2 chairs together playing Minecraft. And I'm like, what are you doing? play Minecraft, and they're both on the same controller. I'm like, sometimes I don't even ask anymore. It's just not even worth it. I'm like, okay, you do anything violent? Is this an approved game? Okay, fine. Just be yourselves, kids.
Yeah, well, it's relatively harmless. It's just one of those puzzling things to adults. You're like, what are you like? What are you watching? Like my nephew plays it too, and I'm just like, he's just so fixated. And
does he watch the YouTube videos?
Yeah, he watches the YouTube videos.
That's the thing. Okay, so because we didn't have YouTube
that's a
growing
new
up,
thing, right? The watching the kids play other games thing. That's so crazy.
There's this one guy, he does these like hide and seek Minecraft videos, and he sings a song, "I put my booty in your face." And all of a sudden I heard the kids started to sing that to each other. I'm like, what in the world is going on? It boggles my mind. And listening to me, because again, I work in technology, I embrace it, I love it, but there are aspects of starting to realize like, oh, these kids of mine are starting to figure out ways to circumvent it. They keep trying to convince me to let me have a podcast, like let them have a podcast, and I want to. But then I'm like, do I really want to? Because Lord knows what they would say. I mean, I have the equipment now since I do co-host a show with my mom. I could just let them in the closet with the USB dual pre, and just let them go. But part of me is like, what would they talk about and what would they do? It'd probably be the best or the worst thing. I'm not sure yet, Harry.
Well, you could always record the episode. You don't have to publish it. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Get the microphone in front of them and see what comes out.
It's true. They've been on, or they've at least watched me podcast. They're funny. Sometimes they'll, like if it's around their bedtime, I live with my parents now, and my mom, when I'm podcasting later in the evenings, she'll put them to bed, but they'll come into the door. Like what people don't know about the closet is that there's not a door there. So it's my bedroom's right there, because otherwise I would be claustrophobic in here. And so they'll come by and they'll wave, and I pray to God, I'm like, please. Sometimes they're like, Mommy, we heard you talking to Tim and you owe like $4 in the jar. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't count. When I'm on the podcast with Tim, and I'm like, please don't let it be a section where we're talking about the one, sex toy company that wants to sponsor us. I'm like, oh my God. So, and I worry because I'm like, that's out there. The kids eventually may find it and hear it. Like someone's like, Ramona, you should run for politics. I'm like, no, because I did this podcast about me dating and having basically a very, outgoing summer. I'll put it like that. And I'm like, no, I don't think that'll work. So
it's all on the record now.
It's all on the record, and someone's downloaded it and kept it forever. Even people like, you can erase it. I'm like, no, you can't erase it. Once it's out there, it's out there. It's gone. So own up to your life. But the kids themselves are a wonderful mixture of my late husband and I. I see it more and more every day. The biggest thing for me as a mom is just to let them truly be who they authentically are, and not who I want them to be, and to not live vicariously through them. I have a philosophy about parenting that I truly believe. My job is to make them just, competent adults, good human beings. That is my job. So if I've kept them off the pole, out of jail, and out of Blacksburg, which is the where the rival school, the University of Virginia, is located, I've done my job as a mother. So yes. So go UVA. Wahoo wah.
Thanks for spending the time with me today.
No, this was, again, bucket list item checked off. I'm not kidding. Like your intro, the music makes me happy. I get super excited. Like, what are they going to talk about? I'm such like a fangirl of the show. I'm surprised you even let me on. Because I was like, in Podfest, I'm like, okay, I really want to ask Harry to be on the show, but I don't want to be that person that asks, because you don't want to be that person that asks. But finally I was like, damn it, have me on your show, because I really want to be on. This is like a thrill.
Well, I mean, it's... Like I said, I've talked about it before, just the idea of having your friends on and just having a conversation that it's like a conversation we would have in person and just happen to be recorded, and we can let the world listen in on it. And it's entertaining. And I think it's the type of conversations more people should be having on their shows. I mean, I get people asking me to be on, and they're like, the worst is the people who are working for someone else. And so like, Joe something is a leader in marketing technologies, and I think you'd make a great guest on your show. And I'm like, I don't think you've listened, because I don't think
Yeah. It's really frustrating. For me this last year, I've been really selective in my guest spots I've been on, simply because everybody's wanted to talk about, because I'm known for him dying. And I'm like, I don't really want that to be the only thing I talk about. So this is only like the third time, other than my own show, that I've actually talked about the death on podcasting, because it's relevant. I was on a show called Her Money Matters, which is a great show. She wanted to do a series about how women handle different like life events. And she asked, you're a widow, do you mind? That for me was valuable. I thought that's going to really help people. And that was worth it. And then there was another one called Mindfulness Mode with Bruce Langford, I think is his name. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about like how, because he kept saying like on social media, I've been really honest about everything I've gone through this year. Because again, you never know who it's going to help. And really, honestly, for me, it was just a matter of I need to get these thoughts out of my head. And this is the only place I know that I can do it and get feedback on in a timely manner. And I don't know if it was right or wrong, but it's what I chose to do. And he said, he's like, did you mindfully do that? I'm like, no, nothing's been mindfulness at all this year. So to come on the show here and tell like my full podcasting story about, and to honor Jay Soderbergh and Mark Asquith and Jonathan and these guys who have become just really, really important to me. That's part of the fun, is saying, again, Podcaster's Drinking Game, you should have gone through your entire fifth of whatever you're drinking. So good luck with that. If you don't want to drink it, you can send it to Harry and I. We will drink it for you.
Yes, we will.
Gladly. So anyway, Harry, again, it's a pleasure.
So what's the one most misunderstood thing about you?
That I am a people person all the time. When I'm on, I'm on. When I'm off, I need to go rest up somewhere. So at conferences particularly, I'll hang out at nights and then I go to bed. I'm a sleepy girl and I'm a homebody. When I'm home, I like to be home. I like to be in my comfy jammies and I like to be snuggled and watch whatever's on Netflix. Yeah, I don't think people really understand that about me too much, because I'm so like outgoing and happy. So but sometimes I'm like, no, I just want to be by myself.
Do you own a Snuggie?
I do not own a Snuggie. My mom bought me for Christmas this beautiful, she got an Etsy. So some woman handmade this. It was like a mermaid blanket. So you could put your feet in it and your like legs look like a mermaid.
Oh, nice.
I used to have a Snuggie, a UVA one, actually. My husband got me. I'm not sure what happened to it. So
those are one of those things you make fun of until you have one and you're like, oh, this is awesome.
I know, because you can drink your hot cocoa, like the infomercials, like drink your hot cocoa, work on your laptop. You're like, man, this is like the best backwards robe ever.
Backwards, yeah, it's exactly what it is.
I mean, seriously, some person took their robe and went backwards, and then another person saw it and goes, I'm going to make those and sell them and get them licensed with like various teams and colors and patterns, and they made $1 gazillion. Good for them.
Yeah. What have you changed your mind about recently?
Oh, that's a really great question. Honestly, I've changed my mind recently about not having to justify why I'm not doing things anymore. So again, the freedom of being a widow, and there are some benefits to it, is I don't have to explain anymore why I don't want to necessarily go out to a bar with some girlfriends. I can just say I'm tired and they just know, so that's kind of a freedom in that. And the other thing was I fought the improv class for a long time. I did it really because of the new boyfriend, and I kept fighting going, I don't like this. I don't like this. Once I finally gave into the process, I'm like, oh, now I get it's fun. So the actual improv class of the lessons of listening and just adding to the scene and agreeing, which are never any of my strong suits. Once I kind of settled into that, it was like, oh, this is a lot of fun. I get it now.
It seems like there'd be a lot of lessons that would translate well to podcasting too.
It's a lot of lessons that just translate, I think, just to life. Yeah. They do, if you can in your local area, find an improv class. Just take the basics and you will be amazed at what it does. Because the instructor we had is a guy named Brad McMurrin. He studied actually with Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. And he's been doing it a long time, so he's very good at it. And the one thing he said is that, again, the basic rules are, the yes and. So always add something to the scene. Don't negate. So I was on a panel at Podfest, and there was a guy that kept yes butting me, and I kept wanting to slap him, going, you're negating me. Stop it. And then make your partner look good. So make the people around you look really good and support them. And I think that's just a great lesson. And then, just add to the scene. Don't change. Don't negate. Just, go with the flow sometimes. Stop trying to change the world. I think podcasters in general have a really bad habit of either completely copying what the other person is doing. So they're not adding to the podcasting industry. You're just copying, which isn't good. You need to add something new and exciting and fresh sometimes, or you need to make the rest of the podcasting world that's doing it look really good with what you're doing. I think that's a big lesson. I think if anybody can take from podcasting is that instead of just saying, hey, let me copy this format and do like a lightning round. How many of those do we have now? Every podcast is on fire. We need no more podcasts that are on fire, kids. Okay. The word fire, unless you're doing a firefighter podcast. Okay. No more fires, no more nations, nothing. Just okay. It's already taken. I'm so sorry. Come up with something else. It's okay. I'll help you. But just
reach out to Ramona. She'll give you some podcasting therapy.
Just something, no more fire, nothing ablaze, just nothing. We got one guy that does that awesomely, really well.
Yeah, he sort of nailed it, and he's got to stake this claim there.
Yeah, so and that's okay. He's done that. Find your own claim. There's still lots of land in this podcasting space. There's still most grown-ups don't even know where the podcast app is. You have time to build your following, kids. I promise. Just take your time. Come up with great content, take the time to listen. And then when you go post a question in a Facebook group, actually listen to what these people are telling you. When you have someone who's experienced giving you good advice, listen to the good advice because we've been there. We've done what you're about to do.
Well, hopefully everyone that does start a podcast does it with your enthusiasm and with your passion, Ramona, because it's very infectious. And I think it makes for great listening, easy on the ears, puts a smile on people's faces. And I think those are all pieces of the puzzle. And those will determine how far you go in your podcast. Because if you love what you do and you do it every day, you don't have to do 2 a day like Ramona. That's a bit crazy. But if you if you pick a topic you're passionate about, I think that's going to come through. And that's why I was so happy to have you on, because who you are in person is who you are here. And I know that there's no reason to be anybody else. So I really honor your friendship and thank you for coming on.
No, again, thank you for letting me check out the bucket list item. And now, I just realized something, Harry. I get to be in the Photo Up podcast movement. Yay! I'm so happy.
That's going to be, talk about, I tried it I did it at 2014. I didn't get to try it at 2015 podcast movement. It's hurting cats, but now I'm up to, at least 100 something podcasters, probably 30 to 40, maybe 50 of whom are going to be a podcast movement. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it.
You need to have team captains. So these people are responsible for this group of podcasters and so that it takes less work for you. So you say activate team captains, it's like a phone tree, for the PTA. You have one mom that calls another mom, that mom calls another, and it goes on until the message gets through. I don't know why we still have phone trees in the PTA these days. This is obviously something you don't have to experience, but they do exist, or Girl Scouts or anything else. You're like, can I just do a blast text message? But apparently no, the phone tree still exists.
The blast text message is the idea, but I may have to get your help to corral these people together. So we're probably gonna have to plan something, because I need a plan of attack, because I don't know.
You need people pleasantly bossy. I'm one of those people. Well, you need people that are pleasantly bossy. Just come on, children. Let's go. We're gonna go over here now. Harry needs a photo. Yeah. So, and who can get away with being that bossy? That I should have said that is my secret talent, is be pleasantly bossy, because sometimes you have to do that at these conventions and go, children, come on, come with me. It's okay. Come to the light.
That sounds like it should be a podcast. Pleasantly bossy.
Pleasantly bossy. It's probably already taken. If not, someone's going to take it right now. I guarantee that URL's gone. Pleasantly bossy. That's okay. I'm going to stick with the Spapreneur thing with my mom for a while.
I'm sure you get your hands full with that. All right, girl. Big virtual hug. And thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you, Harry.
Where can people track you down online?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can definitely find me at the podcast website's community group, because I'm in there all the time. You can also follow me on Twitter at SportsGalPal still. I don't think I'll ever change that, because Why?
That's you. That's who you are.
It's me. I'll watch sports again. And then also go to spapreneur.com if you want to see pictures of my mom and I, if you want to listen to episodes and hear some of the stories. Eventually we're going to get to like there are really inappropriate men in our line of work. We call them weenie whackers, and there's a whole story about why we call them weenie whackers. I once had a suburban mom come in a Volvo, Harry, completely drunk, and the police had to escort her out of the day spa in handcuffs. We have had therapists pass out. We have had therapists show up drunk. We have had, we could be a reality show and highly entertaining. And it's just, it's just the nature of our business. And the best part is that the clients all know everything that goes on. I mean, it's the most unrelaxing day spa on the planet, but it works. Because it's really relaxing. Once we're in the room, we're a lot of fun up front, like with the lobby and the clients, like getting them really accepted there. Once they're in the rooms, it's complete serenity and relaxation, and we don't talk or do anything. Like, I'm not in the rooms with them, so they don't have to worry about it.
Sounds like a blast.
If you ever come to Virginia, we will let you come to the day spa for free. How about that?
I'm gonna have to. All right. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Harry.
Night. It's evening there. Yeah.
It is evening here. Yes, I'm gonna go put tiny humans to bed.
So thanks again to Ramona for joining me on the show. It's always nice to have a conversation with someone who is so excited to come on, and it really is a humbling experience when they're a fan of the show and they get to come on the show and they bring their A game, and Ramona certainly did. And I am eternally grateful to you, my friend, for that, and I can't wait to hang out again at an upcoming conference. We are a proud member of Podcastica.com. Head on over to that website for those podcasts that will entertain you, and hopefully you'll find something there that you like. Intro and outro music composed by Cedar and Soil. If you check the recent posts in the Podcast Junkies Facebook group, of which you should already be a member, and Instagram and Twitter, you saw that I was giving some love to Cedar and Soil. He recently released a new EP called Exit Here on Spotify, so he doesn't get a lot of love outside of the one mention that I make. So this is your opportunity to go really check out his new music. It's on Spotify. It's Cedar and Soil. Check out the recent tweet. And the album is called Exit Here. Thanks again, George, and an amazing job. He's just a really talented musician. Don't forget to support our episode sponsors, Shure. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/Shure and Podbean at podbean.com/podcastjunkies. Okay, you made it this far. The retention hashtag is going to be GalPalRamona. I think in the spirit of how she's just an amazing friend and just all around great gal. I want to support her and show some love with that hashtag, and tag myself, podcast_junkies, and sportsgalpal on Twitter. Let us know you made it this far. We love to read those. Tune in next week and hear my conversation with Adam Lewis Walker, host of Awakening Your Alpha. And last, call to action, if you will. That's what it's called. This me having you take action is called a call to action. I don't know if people knew that, or that's just something we assume because we're in digital marketing. But it's funny that people who are just podcasters might think that that's a weird thing to say. So I'm officially rambling. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/8tools, the number 8, tools, one word. And I recently updated the PDF that I give away. You may have seen it on the site. It's been 3 years and I realized it needed some refreshing. I took out some tools. I added some new ones. It's my free PDF, how to skyrocket 8 tools to skyrocket your podcast launch and production. Again, brand new. I recently just finished up modifying it, and it's got some really nice productivity tools that I use on a day-to-day basis with Podcast Junkies and with my company Fullcast. I'd love for you to have a copy if you don't already. So head on over to podcastjunkies.com/8tools, the number 8. That's it. See you guys next week. Have an amazing weekend. And if you did something cool, let me know about it.